Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues podcast. It is episode number 9 of the podcast, the penultimate one of this season. We will be doing podcasts in the off season, talking about all of the latest news and rumours, and let's be honest, it's very rare at the moment that a week goes by without an absolute plethora of news and updates surrounding some part of Everton Football Club, be it the players on the pitch, be it the manager in the dugout, be it the owners or lack of owners in the stands. There is always something to sit down and talk about, so don't be worrying. When we get into the summer, when we get into the transfer window, there will still be content, there will still be podcast episodes coming out, hopefully still weekly. If there is the odd week where there's not really much to talk about, then maybe we'll find something to discuss that isn't news related, but we will still be uploading the content. But in terms of this season, this is ultimately the penultimate one of the season, because we're going into our penultimate game of the season. Of course, Everton coming off the back of a 1-1 draw against Luton last Friday evening. We're going to talk a little bit about that in today's podcast. We're also going to talk about our final home game of the season this coming Saturday against Sheffield United at Goodison Park. A good opportunity for us to wave goodbye to what has been another absolutely horrific season, one that has caused us, I think it's fair to say, more stress and more worry and more anxiety than either of the last two, because of the punch deductions, because of the ownership situation. It's felt like this season was very much sort of do or die for Everton Football Club, and thankfully we've managed to get ourselves safe with a couple of absolutely fantastic results over the last month or so. But I think I speak on behalf of every Evertonian when I say this. I absolutely cannot wait to see the back of this season, and I absolutely cannot wait to as I say, to be able to walk away from it and not have to worry about point deductions, and not have to worry about, who's playing on a Saturday and whether we need Nottingham Forest to win or Brentford to win or West Ham to win or whoever it might be. And that's not me saying I don't think Everton will ever get another point deduction again, because no one, Everton will probably have to face another case next season, but at least we'll have a few weeks where we don't have to worry about it, and we can sort of sit with the peace of mind knowing that Everton will be playing Premier League football next season. So we'll talk about that final home game of the season as well. It does have a little bit of significance to it, that game, actually, because it's not just the final home game of the season. It's not just a game against a side that are already relegated. Obviously Everton's position, we are now safe, confirmed safe, so there's not a lot riding on the actual game of football in itself. However, for either team, however, there is some things off the pitch that, obviously are floating around the atmosphere. Seamus Coleman's situation, whether or not he will be given a new contract going into next season. Obviously, if not, then that would mean he would leave the football club after 14, 15 years of being an absolutely unbelievable footballer, an unbelievable custodian of the football club. It would be a heartbreaking day to see him leave the football club, especially if it's just off the back of not having his contract renewed. So it's very possible, unfortunately, that this game on Saturday could be the last time we see Seamus Coleman in an Everton shirt. I know the manager's spoken about that today, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the podcast. But even though there's not much for either team to particularly fight for in terms of points on the table, there is that added sort of, I suppose, motivation that the higher you get in the table, the more money you make, and a win for Everton at the weekend might mean one extra place, finishing one extra place higher, and that's an extra couple of £1 million, which for Everton in the situation that we're in would be absolutely huge. But like I said, the Seamus Coleman situation really does add some gravitas to this game. But before we go into talking about any game of football, be it Luton or Sheffield United, I think it's only appropriate that we start with the takeover situation, because I've said on this podcast a couple of times that when I've been asked about the takeover, and there's been, news and reports surrounding 777 and, everything that's going on with them not sort of associated with Everton Football Club, all of their issues that they've got going on with the various football clubs that they own and the various sums of money that they seem to so they seem to owe left, right, and centre to various different people. And I've always sat here and remained quite consistent in my message that I don't really pay too much attention to it unless it's directly related to Everton Football Club. Yes, I read it. Yes, I acknowledge it. And yes, often it makes me think, oh my God, who are these people that could potentially be running my football club? But I don't dive into it too much because a lot of what we've read over the last few months or so has been articles and reports that aren't directly associated with Everton Football Club. They aren't directly addressing Everton Football Club. They're addressing 777 themselves. And yes, I know that indirectly impacts Everton Football Club because they were linked with a move to buy Everton. But I think I said last week on the podcast, I'll sit down and I'll talk about them when either a reputable source or a source that I deem to be reputable has come out and spoken about them in association to their takeover with Everton, or when it's confirmed by the football club, because I don't really want to get myself entangled in who 770 money to. And I've spent the last 4 to 5 years, unfortunately, and definitely not through something I've wanted to do, but through something I've almost had to do, like the majority of us watching. We've spent the last 3 years delving into Everton's finances and why Everton's finances are such a mess and who's responsible for it and where certain money's been going and how much money we've been spending on this, that and the other. And it definitely wasn't something I was going to start doing with Standard Liège and other football clubs that are owned by 777. So I sort of sat off on it and adopted the idea of I'm not even going to think about it or allow it to enter my brain until it's confirmed that they're taking over Everton, and then we can start to address it because then it matters. However, we have had some quite significant news over the course of the last 24 hours regarding 777 and their potential takeover of Everton Football Club. Now, there's been a couple of reports over the last week or so about 777, very similar reports to the ones that we've been reading numerous times over the last couple of months. They owe money here, they're being taken to court by this person, taken to court by that person, etc., etc., etc. And I read these reports, earlier in the week, and again, as I typically do, I read them and I thought, that doesn't look good, but let's just see what happens. If they take over Everton, then I'll look more into this report and actually understand what's going on. But for the meantime, as I said before, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty details of 6 clubs around Europe and their finances, for this all to fall apart anyway. And that actually looks like it might be the case. Paul Joyce, who is, of course, one of the most reputable sources in the country when it comes to news and information, very, very rarely puts anything out, Paul Joyce, that isn't true or doesn't come true. He said yesterday that Farhad Moshiri is considering terminating the agreement with 777 partners for the American firm to take over Everton Football Club after persistent doubts over 777's financial capabilities. Now, that was a really, really, really big statement, that, and a really, really big article. Alan Myers also said yesterday that a serious doubts around 777 Partners' acquisition of Everton, and discussions are focused on bringing a resolution this week, and more importantly, focusing on the way forward for the football club. We've just read that one out, haven't we? Sorry. So yeah, there's very clearly worries about this from within Everton. Alan Myers also reporting that discussions remain ongoing between Farhad Moshiri and 777 regarding the sale. Talks in London were expected over the next few days as Moshiri seeks clarity and a resolution to complete the deal. An outcome is expected before Everton's final home game against Sheffield United. So that report I've just read there from Alan was published before Paul Joyce's tweet. And obviously that says that they're looking for an outcome before the game against Sheffield United on the weekend. And Paul Joyce's report suggests that Farhad Moshiri is considering terminating the agreement with 777. So, yeah, as I said, I chose to wait until sort of reputable sources started to discuss this and started to discuss it in connection with the takeover to Everton, not just in connection with 777's ownership of other football clubs, because like I said, I don't really want to concern myself with that. But as soon as these sorts of sources start to come out and discuss Everton, that's when I'll start to concern myself. And it looks like over the last 48 to 72 hours or so, this seems to be this indication that the deal is practically on its way out. Now, listen, again, I don't want to sit here and say the deal's dead, the deal's off, they're not taking over Everton, etc., because at the end of the day, firstly, we are not privy to all of the information, regardless of how many articles we've read online, regardless of how many reports we've read, no matter how many tweets we've seen and how many different people have come out and spoken about this. Nobody is privy to all of the information apart from Farhad Moshiri and those members of 777 and other people around the football club, but certainly not reporters and journalists. So, again, that is something to consider when talking about these things, because until it's sort of put in writing by the football club that either A, they are taking over, or B, they're not taking over, we don't quite know what's going on 100%. And B, we're talking about a fella here in Farhad Moshiri who has been at this football club for 8 years now, and the only consistent thing he's did over that time, the only consistent thing he's done over that 8-year period is make baffling decisions consistently. You think about the appointment of Rafael Benitez as the manager of the football club. You think of some of the players Everton have signed because Farhad Moshiri was wanting to sign them. You think of some of the statements Farhad Moshiri has come out with and the absolute nonsense that has been written within those statements. And the one thing that you have to say about Farhad Moshiri is he is completely unpredictable, and none of us know what he will do next, and none of us know what decision he will make. And even if we look and we think, right, okay, it's quite clear now that the 777 thing needs to be shut down because it isn't working and it isn't going to work and it isn't going to be healthy for our football club moving forward. You've had the Everton Shareholders Association have come out and spoken about their concerns and asked for Farhad Moshiri to basically shut the deal off now. You've had the Fans Forum come out and express their concerns, and various different fan pages and various different people have come out and basically called for Farhad Moshiri to now put a stop to this. Lots of journalists as well have come out and said something similar, but that hasn't stopped Farhad Moshiri doing what he's wanted to do before. I don't think there was one Evertonian who was for the appointment of Rafael Benitez in 2021, and there was quite a considerably loud dissent towards that appointment online, and there was quite an obvious issue amongst the Evertonians with that appointment, and yet he still went along and made the appointment. So just because various people have come out and spoken up about this and spoken up about why they believe 777 should now be removed out of the situation. And I agree, by the way. I think now is the absolute perfect time to say to them, right, this isn't going to work. And if even if it was to be accepted, there's absolutely no guarantee that there will be anything positive to come from their ownership of Everton Football Club. So let's walk away. That doesn't mean Farhad Moshiri is going to think like that, because at the end of the day, I've said this before and I'll say it again, regardless of what people think, regardless of what people may say, Farhad Moshiri doesn't give one iota about Everton Football Club. He doesn't give one care about whether or not Everton Football Club exists in the next 10 years. He doesn't care whether or not Everton is successful in the next 10 years. He doesn't care whether or not Everton Football Club, cease to exist in the coming months. As soon as he walks out that door, he won't give a shit about what happens with Everton. And that means that he is more than likely going to sell to anybody that is willing to buy from him. And that worries me. And that has been proven by the fact that 777 are still in the equation months and months and months after they should have been told no, because it was quite evident months and months ago that there was big issues here. Even if 777 come out and try and defend certain accusations, or come out and try and defend whatever's been written about them in the news and the media, there is quite a clear media sort of narrative towards 777, and those narratives don't come out of nowhere. Now, I'm not defending 777 here, but their only defence could be, well, lots of stuff written in the papers and lots of stuff written in the news and the media isn't true, it's not the case, it's this, that and the other. And I believe that is a lot of their defence whenever they come out and are asked questions. A lot of it is it's actually not what it seems. But you then have to ask yourself, well, why would there be a media witch hunt towards 777? If 777 were absolutely fine and ran their businesses, smoothly and did everything they were supposed to do, then there wouldn't be all of this negative press. There wouldn't be all of this negative attention. I highly doubt that there's anybody out there to get Josh Wander or 777 or members of 777 just because they don't like them. It obviously stems from something, and that should have been the reason Farhad Moshiri gave 4 months ago to walk away from the deal, but he didn't. He persisted with it, and that's why I don't want to sit here and make any sort of assumption and sit here with a smile on my face or celebrating or jumping up and down at one report that simply says Farhad Moshiri is considering walking away from 777, because as I've just read, as much as Paul Joyce has reported that at 7:30 yesterday evening, Alan Myers had reported at 10 o'clock in the morning, so only sort of 9 hours earlier, that Farhad Moshiri was looking to seek a solution regarding the sale of the football club, and talks will progress in London over the next couple of days to seek clarity and a resolution to complete the deal, not to make a decision on the deal, but to seek clarity and a resolution to complete the deal. So I don't trust Farhad Moshiri one bit. I haven't got an inch, I haven't got an ounce, I haven't got an even a smither of trust for that fella. What he's done to our football club is an absolute disgrace, and he's been possibly the worst thing to have ever happened to our football club. And just as much as I didn't trust him to make the correct decisions when it comes to employing managers, just as much as I didn't trust them when it comes to making the correct decisions to bring in players, I certainly don't trust them when it comes to making the correct decision to bringing in a new owner of our football club who is going to, ultimately be responsible for our football club and the running of our football club for the foreseeable future. So, if you were to ask me now, do I think 777 will still take over at Everton Football Club? The common sense answer would be no, because it is quite clear that there are far too many issues going on with them at the moment. And also, Everton as a football club and everything we've been through over the last 3 years or so, profit and sustainability breaches left, right and centre, points deductions left, right and centre, changes of manager consistently, playing squad shopping and changing consistently and getting weaker year in, year out, the board absolutely taking the piss and effectively just robbing the football club, and then, leaving. There is no current board at the football club now. It's stand-ins that effectively are just there to fill a space. The last thing Everton need is more background noise. If there's one thing Everton have had in abundance over the last 3 years, it has been background noise. Whether it be, ex-members of the board coming out and making up nonsense rumours to try and create a civil war between the fan base before important games, whether it's been point deductions and therefore, lots of opposition fans and neutrals sort of pointing the finger saying, oh, they cheated, they deserve this, they deserve that. Whatever it might be, if there's one thing Everton ever had in an absolute abundance over the last 3 years, it has been noise. Background noise, unwanted noise in the media. And the last thing we need now is more unwanted noise. The last thing we need now is an ownership of, an owner coming into the football club, or a group of owners coming into the football club who have got their absolute plethora of background noise to follow them as well, because that then becomes associated with Everton. That is the last thing we need. The last thing we need is new owners that have got, as I said, sort of accusations and then, things coming left, right and centre out their ears. We just don't need it whatsoever. And like I said, I think the common sense thing now would be for Everton to walk away from the deal and for Farhad Moshiri to walk away from the deal and just say, look, this isn't going to work. We've tried to make it work for months now. It ain't going to work. Let's shake hands and move on. But I really, really do fear that A, Farhad Moshiri isn't clever enough to do that, and B, Farhad Moshiri doesn't care enough. And I really do think Farhad Moshiri is just thinking, right, okay, well, as long as you're the only people that are interested in buying the football club, you're the ones I'm going to sell it to. And that's why it really, really frustrates me when I read sort of articles and they say things like, oh, there's an American consortium waiting in the wings, there's a Saudi Arabian consortium waiting, whatever it might be. It really, really winds me up, because that sort of news gets people excited. Oh my God, it mightn't be 777, it might be another group, it might be, oh my God, it could be another person coming in. The reality of the situation is, if there are other people interested in buying Everton Football Club, whether it be MSP, whether it be, I don't know, another consortium, whoever it might be, it's absolutely fucking pointless if those people are just sat watching this happen. Because I'm not quite sure Farhad Moshiri is clever enough to think, do you know what? I can walk away from this 777 deal and I'm going to have people in the background waiting. If those people are in the background and they're waiting and they're thinking, do you know what? We'd be quite interested in buying Everton Football Club here. They need to make themselves known, and they need to make it known publicly. They need to come out and say, we're interested in buying Everton Football Club. Now, I know there's some form of agreement there with 777, and you might say, oh, they're not allowed, Cam, because of an exclusive, whatever it might be. But, you know, just because they mightn't be allowed to talk directly to Farhad Moshiri or have direct contact with the football club doesn't mean that they can't come out in the media and say, we'd be interested in buying Everton Football Club. And then there, it's in the face for Farhad Moshiri to look at, to read and go, all right, okay, so if I do say to 777, listen, this isn't working, let's move on, I know I've got these that are interested, but there's no good. This, oh, a 7-7, an unknown American consortium is waiting in the wings. Well, fuck off, waiting in the wings, and come out and say, I want to buy this football club. Because whilst you are waiting in the wings, this fella is going to persist to try and sell it to 777, because that's what he's done for 6 months. And it's very, very, very evident now, especially after the last sort of 48 hours or so and everything we've been reading in the last 48 hours or so, that 777 cannot own Everton Football Club. They just simply can't. And another thing which is nonsense, by the way, is the Premier League's owners test, or whatever it's called. That is a load of nonsense, because what's the point in having an owners test if you can't say no? What's the point in having an owner's test if the only options you can say is yes or not at the minute, but go and get me this, and then yes? What's the point in that? That doesn't stop owners such as 777 coming in and owning football clubs, does it? It effectively just says to desperate owners that want to sell, just go and get a bit more information and then we'll just let them have it, yeah. That's nonsense. The Premier League should be all over this, saying no, they're not owning Everton football. They haven't got the proof of the funds, and all of this noise going on in the background. Not a chance. But they won't, because of the rule. It's not the rule. The fact is, they don't give a fuck about anybody except the top six, the Premier League, and that's just fact. Worst league in the world, most boring league in the world. It's absolutely terrible. But but yeah, like I said, hopefully this season end to the 777 stuff now. Hopefully we can move on and you know, we can get an answer over the next sort of 24 hours or so, and hopefully the owner can turn around to them and go, listen, this isn't working, so we're just going to walk away from it. Whether he will do that or not is a completely different question, and we'll have to wait and see about that one. But don't be surprised if Farhad Moshiri still persists on trying to sell to 777, because, as I said, he doesn't care about who owns the football club. He doesn't care about who it goes to. He just cares about getting some money back and walking away. And that is a huge, huge, huge worry. A huge worry when you've got the league coming out and saying, well, we can't say no, and you effectively know that the owner's mentality is, well, I just want to sell it because I want to get out. It's that's a really worrying situation that we're in. But I suppose the positive is Paul Joyce is a very, very reputable source, and you know, for him to come out and say that Moshiri is considering just ending the deal with 777, that shows that there's something in it, and hopefully that isn't just a consideration, and hopefully he does actually make that decision over the course of the next couple of days or so, because yeah, it's not looking good. It's not looking good, and as I said, I'm not getting excited, because I think anybody that trusts Farhad Moshiri to do the right thing is absolutely off their head. So until there is evidence that he has done the right thing, not said he's going to, that's when I'll get excited. But until then, I'm still worried about what the future holds for Everton Football Club. Heliard last night, who have been reporting David Healy, who is a financial journalist at Bloomberg, who of course are a huge business reporting organisation, shall we say. He reported last night that MSP Sports Capital are exploring the opportunity of buying Everton Football Club. Now, this is not surprising at all. MSP obviously were the huge bidders and huge favourites to take over Everton Football Club prior to 777 coming in. There was some form of disagreement between MSP and Farhad Moshiri, and it all makes sense, doesn't it, really, when you read things like this? You know, the whole situation with MSP and how MSP come about. MSP have obviously sat down with Farhad Moshiri at some point over the last couple of years and approached the topic of buying Everton Football Club, and whatever has been said in those meetings, there has been something that Farhad Moshiri isn't quite happy with and isn't quite isn't ultimately willing to budge on, and therefore he's then said, right, okay, well, I'm not happy with that and I'm not willing to budge on it, so we'll go our separate ways. He's then found a buyer who is willing to budge on it, aka 777, purely because they're desperate to buy a Premier League football club and because they've got everything else going on in the background. Farhad Moshiri's then agreed to sell to them, and MSP have sort of just sat in the wings for the entirety of this period of 777 and their proposed takeover of Everton. MSP have always been sitting in the wings, and we know that because there's been various articles and reports during that period of time to suggest that MSP are still interested in some form, and obviously Everton owe money to MSP as well, so there will always be that association with Everton Football Club until that money is paid off. Now, MSP obviously back in the equation now, seemingly, according to Bloomberg and their reporters, and it really does scream to me that they've sort of sat down with Moshiri. They've said, listen, this is the situation, this is what we're going, this is what we want to do. Moshiri said no, and they've effectively gone, he'll take this deal because he'll realise that the only other people that are there are people that ultimately can't put the funds together to buy the club. He goes away, he finds 777, he tries desperately to make it happen. The Premier League are hesitant. Various different reports across the world suggesting that it would be a terrible idea, and now he's considering walking away from 777, and MSP all of a sudden now are starting to show themselves a little bit more. Almost like they knew that this would happen. But again, whether or not that comes to fruition, whether or not that has any sort of legs, I suppose we'll wait and see over the course of the next sort of few weeks and months or so. But it's a situation that I've said before and I'll say it again, I'm bored of now. I really, really am bored of it, and a lot of the enjoyment of supporting a football club has been taken away from me over the last couple of years or so, because not only have Everton been in a relegation battle for 3 years on the spin now, and I know we wouldn't have been in one this year if it wasn't for the point deductions, I get that, but regardless, we've been in a relegation battle for 3 years on the spin now. I get that, and I know that that is, obviously not great and has a negative impact on the way we feel, etc., etc., but even just taking away from that, it almost feels strange to say this, but the fact we've been in 3 relegation battles on the spin and the football we've been watching has been torrid week in, week out, it's almost, ironically, not as bad in a weird way as everything else that's been going on, because we support our football club to support the football team. We support our football club to go week in, week out, to watch them on that football pitch, to cheer them on, to enjoy moments like when we beat Liverpool, and to be upset and frustrated in moments like when we lost to Luton at Goodison Park. That's what we go for, and we grow up knowing full well that football is very much a sport in which some weeks you win and you're made up and you're bouncing, and some weeks you lose and you're frustrated and you're upset and, you're not quite You're not quite in as good of a mood as you would have been if you won. We knew that growing up. I knew that growing up. I knew that that was what I had to expect. I didn't think I'd be worrying about who owns my football club or who's the financial director of my football club or how much money we're spending compared to how much money we're bringing in. And having to be privy to all of that information and constantly reading articles about the running of the football club, the ownership, the board members, it really, really has sucked out all of the fun for me. And it's almost made this whole sort of life of supporting Everton a little bit of an inconvenience, I think, and I'm just being honest, that's exactly how I feel. And like I said, that's mad, isn't it? Because you would think 3 relegation battles on the bounce, and the team gradually getting worse and worse as the years go on would be the biggest inconvenience and would cause us to sort of think, oh, do you know what, is this even worth it? But it's not even the football, it's not even the results, it's not even the performances on the pitch that's put us in that position. It's everything else going on with the football club. And I've said it for months, I just want a solution. I just want a solution to this because I'm sick to death of talking about it, and I'm sick to death of reading articles about it, and I'm sick to death of, seeing Sky Sports and Talk Sport and whoever else it be talking about Everton. Who's going to own Everton? We won a Merseyside derby a couple of weeks ago, and then we beat Brentford to stay up in the Premier League the weekend after. Everybody was buzzing. Oh my God, 3 wins in a week, 3 home clean sheets, a Merseyside derby win. We're safe with with a month to go. Unbelievable, brilliant. And like within 24 hours of the Brentford win, there was talks about us going into administration. And I remember picking my phone up and reading it and just thinking, wow, is there any point? Is there any point in this if the only bit of enjoyment we get from football at the moment is when Everton win a game, and even then, whenever we win a game within hours, there's another article online about how we're basically doomed, and we could be looking down the battle of administration. It's just, yeah, it's this season is being the worst season in the club's history, in my opinion. It really, really has. And I know some people will bring up seasons where we've barely survived on the last day, or where we've had. This has been the worst season in the history of the football club, in my opinion. And it's been the only time in the 25 years of my life supporting Everton where I've sort of consciously stepped back and had to think I might just fuck this off, because it's killing me day in, day out. And I've already had to take a step back, as you all know, with the channel, in not sort of reading into every article and not talking about every article, because it just destroys you. It destroys you, and this whole takeover situation is exactly like that. I'm sick of reading about it. I'm sick of hearing about it. I just want somebody to come in, buy Everton Football Club. I don't even want them to be a multi-billionaire or a state or whatever. Just somebody that either knows what they're doing or has got the intelligence, unlike Farhad Moshiri, who has got no intelligence at all when it comes to these things, got the intelligence to employ people that know what they're doing and therefore can run the football club to not even be a huge success, just do well. Just do well. Get into Europe every now and then. Fight for a few cups. Have an exciting team, an exciting manager. Make us want to go to Goodison Park again rather than it being a chore. And no background noise. No, getting sued here or getting point deductions here or going into administration here. Just, like it. Almost like it was under David Moyes, I suppose, but not like that, because football has evolved an awful lot, and we wouldn't survive in this day and age in that sort of situation. But yeah, it's fair play. All as I've got to say is fair play to the Toffee TV lads who go on and talk about this stuff every day. Fair play to all the other podcasts, Bullens, View from a Bullens, and all the others that consistently sit down, multiple times a week, near enough every day, and talk about this, because I don't know how they do it. I really, really don't know how they do it. And I used to be somebody that did it, and this last year has absolutely destroyed me. Anyway, on to positives. Luton Yeah, as I said in the instant match reaction, it was exactly how I expected it to be. Everton were obviously safe going into the game, so didn't really have anything to fight for. Luton did have everything to fight for. They needed to win this game, really. They needed to get all 3 points to almost guarantee their survival, or certainly give them a big boost, obviously, with Nottingham Forest points deduction appeal still not being heard. Obviously, we know now, but at the time we didn't know. And I thought it was a case of Everton being a little bit lackluster. I think I described it as like an early round Carabao Cup fixture in me into the match reaction, and that's what it felt like. It just felt like a team that was sort of not really at full speed, not really at full flow, almost comfortable. And don't get me wrong, I thought we played some nice football at times, certainly in that first half, but there wasn't that intensity that was there against Liverpool. It wasn't that desire that was there against Liverpool, and that's understandable because there's not a need for that like there was in the derby or in the game against Brentford. So I get it. I do get it. I still think we should have had at least 2 penalties. I think it's absolutely hilarious how the whole of the world can find it disgraceful that Nottingham Forest weren't given a penalty at Goodison Park a couple of weeks ago, and they have their own VAR show on it and all of this stuff, and they release a statement and people come out and talk about how awful it is, VAR and this, that and the other, but then Dwight McNeil gets his foot stood in the box and it's ignored, and it's never spoken about again. And I've said this before, this is why I have absolutely no sympathy with Nottingham Forest whatsoever. Firstly, because their fans were incredibly disrespectful when they visited Goodison Park, but secondly, and more importantly, stop moaning, because it's happened to Everton near enough every week, and Everton have had 10 times worse situations that have not been given as penalties than any of them Nottingham Forest ones were, and that one against Luton was another one. Dwight McNeil gets his foot stamped on in the box, goes down, no penalty, and it's not on the back pages of the newspaper. It's not being spoken about by podcasters. It's not being talked about on Match of the Day. It's ignored, even though it's a clear penalty. We then do get a penalty for another clear penalty. Branthwaite ragged down in the box. Dom steps up, scores it. Really, really nice goal. And Luton did what I expected Luton to do. They pushed, they pressed, they got at us, they fought. They got the crowd up, and the crowd was lively, and ultimately they got their equaliser. Again, I think it was a poor goal to concede defensively, but yeah, other than that, again, I thought we were just comfortable. And don't get me wrong, Luton had a bit of the possession in the second half and probably looked the more exciting team, but Luton are just not very good. And that's the fact of the matter, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but the reality of the situation is there's been a lot of praise for Luton this season, and a lot of people are speaking about them as if they've been an absolute unbelievable squad, and a squad deserving to staying in the Premier League. And yes, they've worked hard in games, and yes, they have given a little bit of effort, and they might have lost games going down with a fight, but they've still lost them. They've lost 22 games this season, which is the same amount as Burnley, which is 7 more than Everton, for example, 3 more than Nottingham Forest, who sits 17th. So, yes, they've given a little bit of effort, and yes, they've gone down fighting, but they've still lost games. And the reality of the situation is that is because they've not got enough quality. And I think that was the case again on Friday in that second half. They had chance after chance after chance, but they weren't big chances. They weren't huge chances. They didn't particularly put much pressure on Jordan Pickford because they haven't got a lot of quality whatsoever. Everton just sort of cruised, didn't they, in the second half? Cruised to getting a point. It was a good point. It was an earned point. And yeah, we come away from it. I don't think anybody was even particularly arsed, to be honest, because we're safe. And the reality of the situation is, I think I speak on behalf of all Evertonians when I say this, we just want the season to end now. And this is where it comes to the final game of the season, the final home game of the season, Sheffield United, Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock kickoff. I'm hoping this one is somewhat of a positive, and I'm blindly looking forward to this one. And by blindly, I mean I'm not absolutely buzzing, jumping around, oh my God, I can't wait for the game, but I am quietly looking forward to it for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because we're playing a team that we absolutely should be beating. I know Sheffield United have already been relegated, and that might ease the pressure a little bit, and they might play with a little bit more freedom. I get all of that. And I know they beat us at Goodison Park last season. A couple of seasons ago when they'd already been relegated, and they turned up and they had no pressure and they won the game. But this is a team that have conceded 100 goals this season and have only scored 35 goals. A team with just 16 points in 36 games. They've only won 3 games all season. They've drawn 7. One of them was against Everton. I just think this sort of feels like a game for me that Everton can take advantage in. It feels like a game to me that Everton can use to pick up a sort of a big win, final win of the season, because let's be honest, I'm not expecting much from the Emirates next week. I doubt we will get any higher in the table than what we are now. We're on 37 points, Palace are on 43. We'd have to win both of our games. Palace would have to lose both of their games, and even then, they've got a better goal difference, so we'd have to make up a few goals, and I don't really see us beating Arsenal, and to be honest, I don't really see Palace losing both of their games the way they're playing at the moment. So, we're unlikely to sort of climb the table before now and the end of the season. So hopefully we just go out and we just make this an enjoyable final game of the season. We're safe now, nothing to worry about, nothing to stress about. Sheffield United, again, they've gone down, so equally they won't likely won't have much to sort of fight for. That doesn't mean that they won't, but they won't have anything to sort of fight for. And I'd just like to see Everton go out and for the last time this season, put in a decent performance. Get a decent win, and let us sort of wave this season off and forget about it with a positive result. And if we do that, I don't think many people will be particularly worried about what goes on next week at the Emirates. Do I expect it to be a difficult game? It shouldn't be. I don't think it'll be as easy as maybe you think it will be, but this is a game Everton should be winning. And Everton have to be winning. And like I said before the Luton game, just because we're safe now and we've got nothing to really fight for doesn't mean that we should be going out on the back of 2 games against Luton and Sheffield United and no wins. It'd be nice to win this game. It'd be a good way to sort of end the season. And as I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Seamus Coleman as well and that situation. The manager has spoken about it today. He said the situation is ongoing. I've spoken to him about his view. His thirst is to keep playing. So we'll wait and see on how that one progresses. But yeah, hopefully we can go out and say goodbye to what has been an absolutely horrific season with a positive result. So there you go. We're going to leave it there. I'm absolutely sweltering. The sun's been in my face for an hour. I'm going to go and get a drink and get changed. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It does only take a second if you're new to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe as well. We'll be back next week with another podcast episode, and obviously we'll be back at the weekend with an instant match reaction to the Sheffield United game. But big thank you all for watching. Really do appreciate it. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you after.